Dr. Shane Retty.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's a pleasure to speak to the Radiation Safety Bill, which provides a modern framework to the safe use of ionising radiation. Now, we've heard, Mr. Speaker, that ionising radiation is most used frequently in the health space, and that sits in the specialty of nuclear medicine, and is used most frequently for cancer treatments. Now, when we use radioactive material in medicine, there's generally two pathways that we apply it. There's a diagnostic pathway and a therapeutic pathway. Diagnostically, what we often do is attach a radioactive isotope to a molecule and look where it goes. And we're primarily looking for cancers or overactivity, because cancers metabolize, they take in nutrients twice as fast, sometimes faster, than other tissue, and they metabolize it and catabolize it as well. So we attach a radioactive isotope, and we do this to something like to iodide. For people who have thyroid disorders, we'll attach a radioactive isotope to iodide. You take it as a pill, and the radioactive material goes into the thyroid gland and accumulates in places that are overactive. We'd also very commonly do it with what's called PET scanners, positron emission tomography, and that's where you think there's a cancer in the body, but you just don't know where it is. And that's because in early stages of cancer, it can actually be too small to see with a CT scan or an MRI. But the cancer is there and it's growing fast. And what it's doing is it's eating nutrients twice as fast. Well, one of those nutrients is glucose. So what we do with a PET scan, a PET scan, is we put a radioactive isotope onto the glucose, the patient drinks it, and 45 minutes later we do a CAT scan. And over that 45 minutes, the cancers in the body, if there is a cancer, has taken up the radioactive glucose, and when you scan for it, you see what's called a hotspot on a film, a very important part of diagnostics for cancer, and we're really focused on cancer, Mr. Speaker. We also use radioactive material in nuclear medicine therapeutically. That is, once we've made a diagnosis, once we've found a cancer, we can use radioactive material to kill that cancer, to ablate it, if you like. And that would be very common, of course, for breast cancer, also for cervical cancer, and also for prostate cancer. So a very important part, this bill really solidifies and provides a really robust framework around the use of radioactive material in nuclear medicine and in medicine generally. Now, Mr. Speaker, this bill is also a very important step in advancing our international responsibilities. Some of the conventions that this will help us deploy towards include the amendment to the Convention on the Physical Protection of Nuclear Material. Now, this comes under the auspices of the International Atomic Energy Agency, and it's a convention that talks about the safe use, storage and transport of nuclear materials and the facilities that are involved. So this bill assists further progress towards that implementation. The second major convention that this bill assists is the International Convention for the Suppression of Acts of Nuclear Terrorism. This is under the United Nations. New Zealand signed this in 2005. And this has a broader application than the previous bill. It's more applied to a definition of materials and facilities, and it covers both military and peaceful applications. It talks to the criminalisation of planning, threatening or carrying out acts of nuclear terrorism, and it also requires international cooperation. So this bill assists further progress towards implementation. On that subject, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to conclude with what the Minister led off with in the introduction to the first reading, and that is to reassure and reiterate the comments around nuclear materials in New Zealand. And he commented that this bill does not in any way alter the New Zealand Nuclear Free Zone Disarmament, Arms Control Act, the Nuclear Test Ban Act and the Atomic Energy Act. These are well-established laws. They deal with nuclear weapons and atomic energy, and these matters are outside the scope of this bill, and this bill has been drafted to ensure expressly that there's no doubt that these acts are not offended. So, Mr. Speaker, on that note, I'd like to commend this bill to the House.